2 products in one? It's a headphone amp and a speaker amp. Is it any good? It's $540. Is it worth it? I don't know. Sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's find out together. Yeah. Burson Audio. They are based out of Melbourne, Australia, where they talk cool, like cool people. Anyway, they have a whole bunch of products, including headphone amps, speaker amps, DACs, more DACs and amplifiers, a bunch of stuff. They also make op amps, discrete op amps, which means separate. So instead of a little chip, it's a little chip with a whole bunch of more chips on it. I've got a couple laying around somewhere, which I bought on my own last Black Friday. So they kind of specialize in discrete op amps, and they also came up with some fancy new power supply. So let's talk more about the Burson Funk. I feel weird saying funk. Funk. I feel like I'm using profanity. I know I'm not, but let's talk more about this. But first, a word from our sponsor. Today's sponsor is a very unique one, and when they reached out to me, and I took a look at what they are, what the company's all about, what they offer you, I was in with both feet. Today's sponsor is Established Titles. Listen, have you ever wanted the title of Lord, Lady, Lordship? Well, now you don't have to look anywhere else than Established Titles. That's right. Go over to establishedtitles.com/cheapaudioman and get the title of Lord or Lady like you've always deserved. This is quite possibly the coolest gift you could give yourself or give someone else. And right now they're running a huge, and I mean huge, sale. Established Titles is a fun and novel way to preserve the natural woodlands of Scotland while helping global restoration efforts. Plus, you get a really cool title in your name. It's a Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds or lords and ladies in English. Title packs give you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, and an official certificate with a crest. Your certificate offers you a unique plot number, which you can use to see the exact location of your land. Established Titles also works for One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future to support global reforestation efforts. You can officially change your name. Get it on your credit card. Get it on your plane tickets. You can even put it on your dating profiles. It makes a great last minute gift and one that you will never forget. So go to establishedtitles.com/cheapaudioman to get 10% off the already crazy low prices. Give your wife the gift of being a lady. Lady. Anyway, you know that song. Sticks. Also, the first 200 people that get one of these things can be within walking distance of my plot. We can start a commune out there. Run, don't walk to establishedtitles.com/cheapaudioman and get what you've always deserved, the title of Lord, right before your name. So I said 2 products in one. That's right. There's a speaker amplifier in this box, and then there's also a headphone amplifier in this box, but they're completely separate. So in essence, you're getting a separate speaker amplifier and a separate headphone amplifier under one roof. It's like when you go to the Taco Bell /KFC. One building, you can get Kentucky Fried Chicken or you can get Taco Bell. It's up to you, but they share one kitchen. The enclosure is the kitchen. The headphone amplifier is KFC. The speaker amplifier is Taco Bell, if that makes sense. So the headphone amplifier is a 3-watt Class A headphone amplifier. I don't know what impedance is. I tried to look it up and it didn't give any specifications as far as what impedance it is. Probably there, I just probably didn't find it. I'm assuming at 32 ohms. However, 3 watts at just about any impedance for headphones is going to be plenty. So you're probably not going to have to worry about the Burson Funk being underpowered for your headphone usage. As far as speaker amplifier, it's rated at 45 watts per channel. 4 ohms, 8 ohms, I don't know. Again, I couldn't find it. 10% total harmonic distortion, I don't know. However, it drove my speakers just fine, which were the Acoustic Energy AE100 Mark 2, as well as the Wharfedale Denton 80th edition. Did just fine with both of those. So let's talk about how it looks. How it looks. Okay, the layout. Layout is very similar to like a Class D amp, like a desktop Class D amplifier. So it's a rectangle, but it's deeper. So look at these two. This is the IEMA A07. This is obviously the Burson Funk. Around the periphery of the enclosure, there are fins. Heat sinks, if you will, because this is a Class AB amplifier and a Class A headphone amplifier. So it's not the most efficient thing on the planet. That's not a bad thing though, because usually, sometimes, maybe, Class AB amps sound better than Class D amps. Class A amps sound better than Class AB amps. I don't know. I'm painting with broad strokes here. Anyway, the point, the takeaway is that this thing needs to give off some heat. So the design of the case, the enclosure here, is good for heat dissipation. It doesn't get super hot, but it was warm when I pulled it out today. That's what she said. On the front here, over here, is your headphone jack, 6.35 millimeter, quarter inch, whatever you want to call it. There's also a this thing right here. I guess it's for if you're wearing a headset. The volume knob is knurled. It's quite nice. Also has a very smooth operation. And it kind of flares out here at the back, so it's quite nice. Very nice. Very nice. Buttons. Over here you have the gain setting for the headphone amplifier. And then next to that you have the selector switch. One is for speaker amp. The other is for headphone amplifier. All the way over here, power button. So there's 4 screws. Boop, 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 boop on the top. So again, somewhat of a similar design as the IEMA A07, but it's very similar design to a lot of desktop amplifiers. What's on the back? On the back is pretty sparsely populated back here. You have one set of RCA inputs. Then over here, right there, like a microphone input. Then you have speaker binding posts, and then you have the power supply. It's a barrel style power supply. I believe it's 24 volts DC, 3 amp. Comes with a power brick. I wouldn't be swapping out the power bricks because it's very good. Binding posts, really good here. Exact same or very similar to the binding posts that are on the Schit, Vidar, Agir, Ager, whatever you want to call it. It was built well. And you have more screws on the back. The ones on the back, though, are a little bit different than the ones on the front. Different size. Which I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me because this amplifier, one of the things about this amplifier is that you can switch out or roll the op amps. Anyway, you're going to have to get a set of Allen wrenches to get this thing open because they are a different size. On the bottom, it's got these foam bumpers. Yeah. Let's talk about how it sounds. How it sounds! So I compared the speaker amplifier section of the Burson directly to the IEMA A08 Pro. Now the A08 Pro does have tone controls. So I had to dial it in a little bit to get it sounding like the Funk. I thought I did a pretty good job though. It was all by ear, so it's not going to be perfect. They both have volume controls, which means they both have a different gain. I tried to match those as best as I could, and I got it to a point where if I didn't know where I was starting, I didn't know what amp I was listening to, so that tells me that the gains were pretty similar. The IEMA A08 Pro can have different power supplies. The one I was using was the 36 volt 5 amp power supply. So there is more power that one can get from the IEMA in theory on paper, but I don't know if it really makes a difference. I just got an O-scope, and some little dummy load resistors here so that I can figure out what power is on amplifiers, kind of get a rough estimate of how much power they're actually putting out before they start clipping. I didn't do that on these. From a sound perspective, they're awful close, very similar. So similar, in fact, that I had a very difficult time when I was A-Bing them. What I did was take the Geshelli Labs J2, the AKM version, I ran that into my Akatika preamp, and then the Akatika has 2 amp outputs, A and a B, and you can run them simultaneously. So I ran RCAs, same cables, so it wasn't no cable difference. Ran those into the amps, and then I ran the amplifier speaker outputs into a Duke Audio speaker and amp switcher, and then all of that into either the AE100 Mark IIs from Ascend Acoustics or the Wharfedale Denton 80th edition. And then I clicky-clickied. And to A-B them blind, I clicky-clickied to the point where I didn't know where I was starting. Sonically, almost zero difference, at least how I had them set up. Very difficult time telling them apart. I was not successful and consistent in picking these amplifiers out from a sonic perspective. However, I was very successful at telling these amps apart from a soundstage width perspective. The Burson is actually way narrower than the IEMA A08. Conversely though, the Burson is actually way deeper when it comes to soundstage because it's very good at imaging. The Burson really separated itself from the IEMA when it came to imaging and layering and being able to put things definitively in space. You can't really tell when you listen to A07. You're like, okay, this is great. Sounds awesome. Then you put on the Burson and all of a sudden things start to get more three-dimensional in space. But again, the IEMA is wider. The Burson is more defined within its width. It's subtle, but it's enough that I could tell these apart when I was switching them back and forth. If I was just concentrating on soundstage width, and then if I was concentrating only on the center image. So depending upon what you want, the Funk could be better or worse than the IEMA. In my opinion, though, I think the Funk does provide a more high fidelity experience when it comes to the imaging because it's just more locked on than the A08 Pro. I could hear the biggest difference when I was close up in the near field. As I moved further back though, it was more difficult to tell the differences. I think most people are going to be using this in a near field setup anyway, so the takeaway is there are differences. I'm not the best person at being able to tell differences in headphone amplifiers. What I'll say about this headphone amplifier is that it's very clean. With headphones, it's more difficult for me to talk about soundstage and imaging. I have heard different headphones sound more open. I'd say the headphone amp section of the Funk is kind of in the middle. It's not as narrow as some of the THX amplifiers I've heard. It's not as wide as some, well, obviously, tube headphone amps that I've heard. I also think the Jashelli Labs Arkle 2.5, a little bit wider when I was comparing it to the Funk. Takeaway here, the Funk headphone amplifier, extremely clean, not really colored one way or the other. Soundstage, right in the middle. Not the widest, not the narrowest. Goldilocks soundstage. Let's talk about what I like. One of the things that I like about this amplifier, obviously, is the ability to upgrade. So one can roll the op amps with this in the headphone section and the speaker section. So fundamentally, you can kind of tweak them to whatever you want them to be. However, that's extra. And when you start to roll the op amps, you're going to get into this thing for around $750, maybe even upwards of $800, depending upon which op amps you choose. Out of the box, though, it sounds great, so you may not want to upgrade at all. But there's probably a reason why you're buying this amp, and that is to maybe upgrade eventually. I also like the build quality. It feels like a much better version of something like the IEMA A07. The volume knob is spectacular. I don't think I've seen a volume knob this good. Well, I don't know if I've ever seen a volume knob this good. Maybe some of the vintage stuff that I have. But on a modern piece of equipment, if you get excited about the quality of your volume knob, then Burson Audio should get some consideration. I like the looks of it. I think the speaker binding posts are excellent. It's also very convenient. I think this is really meant to be on a desk. They do sell a little stand so you can put this vertical, but that stand's not cheap. You don't really need a stand to keep it vertical. You can just put it like this. So it's small. It's going to be able to sit on your desk, not take up too much room. I love the convenience. It's got a great headphone amp. It's got a great speaker amp, all in one small little package. And the imaging, really good. Really, 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 really good. It gives one that sense of the high fidelity experience with just how separated out things are. Let's talk about what I don't like. The price. I know some people are going to argue that $540 is an absolute bargain for something that is this good. I kind of agree, but I kind of disagree, because one could put together an IEMA A08 that's very good, sounds very similar, may not have the imaging, and then add something like the Gishelli Labs Archel 2.5, or something like the Schgitt, Manny, Modi, Magni. There we go. People can argue that the Burson is better. It could be. Is it $200 better? I don't know. That's up to you. It's definitely more convenient because it's in one package. There are other options out there if you're willing to separate things out. There's also options from Topping, SMSL, LoxG that have DACs. Now, I don't think they play in the same league as the Burson Funk. From a sonic perspective, imaging perspective, they're not as good. I think the Archel 2.5 and the IEMA A08 Pro get close at a cheaper price. And the IEMA A07 or A08 Pro do have the option of putting out significantly more power depending upon the power supply that you choose. However, you're adding costs. It's got good build quality though, so that could be the deciding factor for you. There's also a pop. When I'm listening to speakers and I turn off the power, there's a pop. Now, I've heard many amplifiers do this. Car audio, home audio, things like that. I just wanted to report it though because it could be a little concerning for some people. No preamp outputs on this either. And I know this is an amp, this is a speaker amp, so why would you need preamp outputs? Well, think about it as, hey, I just want to use this as a headphone amp now and keep it in my same chain, but I got a bigger, more powerful speaker amp to drive my power-hungry speakers. That's kind of splitting hairs here, but if it did have a preamp out, then you could hook it up to a powered sub as well, or run the option of hooking it up to a more powerful amplifier and still maintaining the volume control here. Kind of splitting hairs here, but I wish I had a preamp out so you could hook up a subwoofer. If you get a subwoofer with speaker level inputs, it doesn't matter. Still would have been nice. Maybe even if it was just a 3.5 millimeter output. Power. I don't know if this is 45 watts at 8, 45 watts into 4, 45 watts at 10% total harmonic distortion, 45 watts at 0.1% total harmonic distortion. I couldn't find it. It was enough power on the AE100 Mark II and the Wharfdale Denton 80th edition. However, if I had the ELAC BS41s or the Mica RB42s, which are much more power hungry, I think you're going to want a little bit more than 45 watts. And the Micas are kind of tailor-made for a desktop application. I wish I had more power. Again, splitting hairs though. But with some of the Class Ds that are using the Texas Instruments chips, the sound's getting pretty good out of a very small package, and one can get a lot more power out of the IEMA A07 or A08. 45 watts is good. I wish it was more. What are my final thoughts? If you're on a tight budget though, this may be too much for you. Don't get me wrong, I think there is value here. I think both of these amplifiers sound really good. I haven't heard anything imaged this well outside of some pretty high-end stuff. So this does a great job of imaging. It's not the widest amplifier out there. But if you're short on space, you want one box, you want something that looks good, is built well, and you have the budget for it, I think the Burson Audio Funk is a great choice because you do have the option to upgrade things in the future. So I have no problem recommending the Burson Audio Funk. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night, we have Patreon-only Zooms. We also have a Patreon-only Facebook group and a Discord server. You can also use the thanks button. It's down at the bottom of the video. Click on it. Give me a couple bucks for a cup of coffee. Don't feel compelled to give me anything, though. You can also use the affiliate links in the description. I'm not affiliated with Burson Audio, which means if you click and you buy, I don't get anything. But that's fine. It's a great product. You can just click on my Amazon link and do some shopping. That helps support the channel. It doesn't cost you any more. You can sign up for Amazon Music, Tidal Music, or Rune. Even if you quit, I still get a couple of dollars. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Maybe get your Burson Audio Funk and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.